I'm Sheila Thompson, the creator of the Father's Day Project. You know, the role of a father has in bringing up a well-adjusted person can never be understated. What is a real man? How do you become a real man? For this topic, I reached out to my friend, public speaker, and best-selling author, Gordon Dalbey. And now, I'm really excited here to introduce to you this 10-part video series with Gordon Dalbey and Warwick Marsh. Each video in the series speaks to a specific aspect of being a man and what a boy needs to become a man in order to raise his own children. If the words resonate with you, please share it with others. And thank you. In the segment Discover the Womb, Gordon talks about his generation's upbringing and identifies some of the issues that come from a lack of fatherly affection.
Gordon, it's great to be talking with you today.
Equally.
Really, really is. And you've written a book. It's called Healing the Masculine Soul. It came out in 1988. Now, that was a pretty radical thing to do back in 1988.
It really was.
How did that journey start? And tell us a bit about the background, your background,
sure.
And perhaps the background of that book.
Sure. I'm a son of the World War II guys. My dad actually was a teenager during the Depression era. So he and his generation didn't have any options, you know, what color of Xbox to get. They just were wondering if they could get a meal, you know, by the end of the day. And he didn't get to be a teenager. He didn't get to drive around in cars and date and all those kinds of things. And just when he got old enough to be a young man, World War II broke out. So his generation really was characterized by a deprivation in so many ways, not just materially, but emotionally as well. And so it was very hard for his generation of men to acknowledge boys and what a boy might need and to listen to a boy's feelings. Nobody ever listened to his feelings. You're not asking about how you feel, whether you're angry or sad. You just got to go take up your gun and go win this war, which praise God they did. And we owe so much to them for it. However, in the States at least, the men in my generation grew up with fathers, therefore, who weren't emotionally capable of connecting with us. And so a boy interprets that as, must be something wrong with me. If you like something, you move towards it and you say it's good and you affirm it. On our generation, our fathers never were able to say, I'm proud of you, or I love you, or give me a hug. I remember when I spent 2 years in the Peace Corps in Nigeria and I came home, in those days we didn't have telephones or emails or anything like that. I never talked to my dad in 2 years. I got off the plane, he came over and he extended his hand to shake my hand. And in that moment, I realized, wait a minute, something's got to stop here. And I moved through his hand and I grabbed him in a hug and he froze solid. And in that moment, I knew we had some work to do, let's put it that way. But you see, what happened then thereafter is this anger began to rise up in a generation of young men saying, why don't you give us this affection? Can't you acknowledge me? Can't you say I'm doing something good? And so
Robert Bly talks about that in his book, Iron John.
Iron John, quite a bit. And he was able to articulate that in a way that I never heard in a church or any other place.
Tell us a bit about, you know, your reading Iron John. What was it like for you?
It was so powerful. My prayer partner, a friend of mine, called me one day and said, Gordon, you've got to read this book about Iron John. I said, what, just read it. I mean, I couldn't put it down. This guy was telling my story about the shame we feel not having the stuff of manhood and how it makes us fearful around women, unable to get close to each other, how the passivity that we have where we were just willing to sit back and let women and everybody else take over. It just revolutionized my thinking. It really, I was stunned for months after reading it.
Because you actually had it articulated that in The Masculine Soul, and if I remember rightly, Bly actually quotes you.
Well, I think Healing the Masculine Soul certainly came out of my reading of Iron John, because I am a Christian, and when I realized here was a man who was not a Christian, but articulating and saying truth that was striking deep into my heart, I began to pray and say, could we not have there is a Christian perspective here. I am a Christian. Could there somebody write about these true, solid truths from a Christian perspective? And that was kind of the beginning of how I began to wrestle with these things and come up with Healing the Masculine Soul.
But as Masculine Soul came out before Robert Bly.
Yes, it did.
So you actually getting you back to the journey in the 60s, you know, coming home from Nigeria, we men actually, we don't do physical contact well. We've got to learn to hug. I think the Europeans are a lot better at this, aren't they? They're much more tactile.
Some of them. It depends on which part of Norway you're in. I can say I'm out in Norway. There you go. I visited Norway, and they were not quite as
the Northern Europeans are very, very much more. But it's like the
Southern Europeans.
Yeah,
right.
Italians, Greeks.
Yeah,
and even the whole Lebanese culture, the whole Arab culture is much more.
Well, I think what happens is when a man doesn't get what he needs from his father, he doesn't get that physical affection, and he needs it. He needs that touch. And I have a chapter in my second book, Sons of the Father, on the brown ooze, where just a boy just being close to daddy and feeling daddy hug him gives him something that he really needs as a boy. Well, if you don't get that, the need doesn't disappear. It goes down into the basement, and so you become afraid later as an adult man. There's this great longing for the man, the father, to hug you and touch you. If that has to be suppressed, then where does that longing go that we want to hug a man? And of course, in this world we live, it can become distorted very quickly like that. Whereas if it's focused where it belongs, where it originally comes from, as a boy longing for his daddy to hold him. I work with men all the time who get very confused in this area. And what helps bring them back into centeredness is finally connecting with saying, I wanted to hold my daddy. And that simple truth is so simple, and yet it's like shatters so much of the falseness that's going on in their sense of themselves as men.